The kind of food that I'm eating today once dominated the Chinese food scene here in the United States. But with the passage of time and changing trends, this food is harder and harder to find. Restaurants serving it have closed. Owners have retired. But today I'm in Toledo, Ohio, and I'm going to visit a restaurant called Golden City for some old school Chinese American food. And I do mean old school. Let's go. Okay, I'm in Toledo, Ohio today, visiting Golden City. And Golden City is definitely a heritage Chinese restaurant. And by that I mean it was opened before that new wave of regional cuisine took hold in the United States. You know, before Szechuan, Xi'an, Hunan, Taiwanese, before any of that came upon the scene, Golden City was already opened and firmly established. So these heritage Chinese restaurants opened when Cantonese food and Chinese American food opened by Cantonese and Toisanese immigrants. When they started opening restaurants, and when these types of Chinese American restaurants serving old school favorites, when they opened, nothing else was on the scene. So these types of restaurants would have opened even most recently in the 1980s. You know, they would have opened in the 70s, the 60s, the 50s, the 40s, even the 30s, and some even before that. So yeah, this is an old school institution here in the northern part of Toledo. I'm very near the Michigan state line right now. And they're known for this Golden City Chinese restaurant for serving almond boneless chicken. That's what they call it here on their menu. I think around the Midwest it's called and best known as Warsu Gai, or Warsu chicken. And this is a Midwestern Chinese dish that is hard to find elsewhere. I've never actually seen it on a menu in the Washington, D.C. area, or even on the East Coast. It may exist somewhere, but I haven't seen it. And this is a rare find. And if you're passing through the Midwest and you enjoy Chinese food and Chinese American food like I do, you got to get this. It's one large breaded piece that's been cut up, and it's doused in this kind of brownish gravy, and sliced almonds are placed on top. I think maybe on the East Coast there's a variation of this dish. I think it's more of an updated version of this dish, and it's called almond chicken maybe. But this is a really old school place. Golden City's been opened for over 50 years. I believe they opened in 1965, and have really established themselves and gained a reputation for this particular dish. To say that they are a local institution is not an exaggeration. Now, I'm just going to dive in and I'm going to stab a piece and begin. Oh man. Oh wow. I'm gonna put some more on my rice. Ooh. Mmm. Mmm. Oh, wow. Mmm. Yeah, it's boneless breast meat. It's breaded, fried, and it's doused in this savory egg foo young type gravy. I mean, that's what I would say. I mean, it reminds me of egg foo young gravy. I would be confident in saying probably that they would use this same gravy in the kitchen to douse the egg foo young. And if the egg foo young are those egg patties, the fried egg patties that is served with gravy, so I'm sure it's the same gravy. That's the gravy I'm familiar with because I eat egg foo young back in the Washington, D.C. area. And so that gravy is a very savory, thick, viscous gravy. It reminds me of that. Mmm. Mmm. And the chicken, you know, it's slightly crispy. The gravy gives it a savory kind of lubrication, but it does dampen the crispiness a little bit. Ooh, I noticed there is some vegetation on the bottom of this box. It looks like iceberg lettuce. Mmm. Yeah, that's what it is. It's iceberg lettuce. It's raw iceberg lettuce, but because of the residual heat coming off the chicken, it's slightly cooked, the lettuce, and it's slathered in all that gravy. So yeah, like I said, I've never seen this dish before, and I've never had it, and this is a really nice discovery. As someone who enjoys Chinese American food and is interested in the history of the Chinese restaurant scene in this country, in the United States, and of the history of the Chinese diaspora in the United States. This is very interesting for me. It's a rare treat to get this Wasu gai or almond boneless chicken. It's a long time coming because I've been eating Chinese American food for a long time, and I can cross this off my list finally. Continuing with the old school theme for this meal, the next dish I'm going to show you is beef with bok choy. I haven't had this at a restaurant in ages. I mean, I have had this combination before, and I imagine it is served probably somewhere in my local area back in Washington, D.C., but I don't recall eating this at a restaurant for maybe 30 years. This is a really old school combination, bok choy with beef. And let me try it. I noticed here it's cooked in a very thick kind of brown gravy, maybe oyster sauce based, I'm presuming. The bok choy pieces are just the stem. I don't see the leafy pieces of the bok choy. Bok choy, if you don't know, is a Chinese vegetable. It has a leafy green tip with a white stem. And yeah, there's some beef fillet pieces in here. Let me just try the beef and the bok choy and get some rice with it. And you see the round black plastic container that I'm eating out of. I brought that with me because I just always carry them. But the old school places don't usually have these black round takeout containers. And so, yeah, the rice simply came in a old school oyster pail container. And it doesn't even have any decoration on the outside of the box. It's just a plain white box. It doesn't have any of those stylized Chinese motifs on the outside or even a metal little handle on it. It's just a plain white oyster pail box. I haven't seen that before. Wow, that's really, I don't know if that's old school or what, but I've never seen it before. Ooh, ooh. So what do I make of the beef and bok choy? The bok choy is well cooked, so it has a softer texture. It doesn't snap or crunch. I cook my vegetables well done sometimes, and the gravy itself is a dominant feature of this dish. So you have a very stew-like mouthfeel to this beef and bok choy. The beef itself is cut into little rectangular planks or slabs, and that's a kind of an old school way of cutting beef. And at the kind of a newer establishments, I don't see these kind of planks of beef as often. It's a meaty, kind of beefy taste. It's not the most tender beef I've ever eaten. It's not excessively velveted, or if at all, but it's good. And it's a very meaty kind of partner to the stew-like bok choy. Okay, my next dish is chop suey. This has to be the ultimate dish. This is the most classic Chinese American dish there is, I think. This is the dish that put Chinese American food on the map. The chop suey craze happened in the early part of the 20th century, beginning, I think, in the first 20 or 30 years or so of the 20th century. 100 years ago in the 1920s, it was all the rage, chop suey. And it's basically a dish that consists of scraps. I mean, this is the origin of chop suey, I'm saying, because chop suey in the Toisanese dialect simply means bits and pieces, odds and ends, leftovers. And so it was just a mixture of odds and ends, whatever they had on hand. And so they concocted, the early Chinese American chefs, they concocted a dish based on these odds and ends. And so from my memory of having this dish, and I haven't had it in ages, I mean, it's available on the on the menus of the newer takeout places, but it's kind of a modern version of it. I'm sure this version, I'm going to look at it just in a moment. I'm sure it's a very old school kind of take on this dish. And from my memory, it always has, celery, onions, bean sprouts in a cornstarch kind of slurry with your protein of choice. That's what I remember. And it's basically the same thing as chicken chow mein. Or not chicken chow mein, but chow mein, and chicken chow mein being the most popular iteration. It's very similar to chow mein in terms of its vegetative contents, except that chow mein has a bed of crispy, crunchy noodles, and chop suey doesn't. Okay, here it is. Wow, it's very savory. I think this version here at Golden City, it has bean sprouts and celery, and there may be some onions in here, I don't know, but it looks like little bits of bok choy pieces maybe. I can't really tell. It's all kind of blended into the cornstarch gravy. The pork itself is just tender strips of pork. It's not overly treated or seasoned. It's not, char siu pork. It's not that. So the pork has a very light color, which is matching the theme of this dish, because everything is kind of light and clear looking, and it just kind of all melds together and is bound together by that slurry of cornstarch, that cornstarch gravy. So it's just a slurry of chopped up bits and pieces. Chop suey, which is what it is. And I'm enjoying this because I haven't had this dish probably since the 1970s, the late 70s or early 80s, or somewhere around that time. And so this is really turning the clock back for me. This is a nice discovery. This is a really old school kind of chop suey, really. Wow. Wow. This food really is like a time capsule. I mean, you saw the interior of this place. I mean, it looks like it hasn't really been renovated at all, really. I mean, the wood paneling and the booths could be very well the original from the 1960s. I think the chairs look slightly updated, but when you walk in there, you are walking back in time. I mean, I certainly had that feeling. The exterior certainly has that feeling. And yeah, I mean, eating this food too, I'm having really a time capsule feeling about it. Wow. It is really a discovery, this place, Golden City here. I think this is called the Point Place neighborhood. In northern Toledo. It's very near the Michigan border. Wow, I'm having a good time. This is like a really old school find, and I'm really enjoying it because old school heritage Chinese restaurants of this kind, you know, have basically died out in the Washington D.C. area where I do most of my eating. And so yeah, you know, as I travel around and as I'm in the Midwest now, I'm enjoying this because like the signature dish, almond boneless chicken, the warsu gai, you know, it's only found in the Midwest, you know, like Detroit and Columbus and cities in Michigan and Ohio, maybe in Indiana, I don't know. But wow, and this chop suey, wow, this is the first chop suey I've had in so long. Thank you so much for watching today's episode. I appreciate it a lot. I enjoyed that food from Golden City, a heritage Chinese American restaurant here in Toledo, Ohio. And I really am glad I stopped in as I'm cutting across the Midwest to eat here because it was a real treat. It was a nostalgic trip and also a great discovery, frankly. So yeah, if you enjoyed it too, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and please consider subscribing to my channel. I'll catch you on my next food adventure. Take care for now. Bye-bye.